To be our best, we need to stay up to date on the latest and greatest. That includes being equipped with prime tools and gear. That's where Shieldbox comes in. It's a monthly subscription box designed specifically for law enforcement professionals. Each month, you'll get a curated box of duty gear and supplies from industry leaders. Sign up today at theshieldbox.com and use code BLUEGRIT to save $10 on your first box.
Discomfort is a sign of growth. So when we realize that, yeah, I can understand a lot of things, but insight without action is useless. It's not enough right now, and especially in today's society, to know. We must do, we must execute, we must move.
Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Blue Grit Radio. Today I'm joined by Rebecca Fitzsimmons from Tactical Harmony, a prior LEO and leadership, a consultant, trainer, mentor, coach, all these things. What title do you like best, Rebecca, for all the stuff that you put out and help people with?
We'll go with leadership coach.
Yeah, okay, love it. So, Rebecca, I want to just jump into all these things that we talk about and we were just nerding out on as far as mindset and leadership. But please, could you give a little bit of an intro and tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'd love to. And first off, thank you so much for having me on your amazing show. And as Eric and I were talking about earlier, we resonate and align in so many concepts from law enforcement to mindset. So this is going to be an awesome conversation, I'm confident. So yeah, a little bit about me. I was an NCIS special agent for almost 15 years. And so I had the honor and privilege to work across all the disciplines that NCIS has. So it wasn't traditional, or I should say it wasn't only, working felony level criminal investigations, but I had the honor to work in counterintelligence and counterterrorism and really be a part of that national security mission as well. So it was a lot, right? I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but so many lessons that really shaped and molded me into the leader I am today. And an important note to make is I had the honor to serve all around the United States, but also in our Europe and Africa field office.
Yeah.
And that matters because I was able to see firsthand how these mindset and holistic leadership principles work on a global scale. And I worked in Ukraine and Romania, the Netherlands, Belgium, Latvia, all over. And it was the same principles that worked no matter what culture, no matter what industry, because after I left NCIS, several years working in a technology company, doesn't matter the level, doesn't matter the industry. These tactics, these strategies work across the world. And so that led me to kicking off my business, Tactical Harmony, where I teach all things mindset and holistic leadership. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. If you would have told me 5 years ago that I would be sitting here talking to you and I would be an entrepreneur, I would probably think you have 5 heads and are crazy. But it's what happens when you follow your intuition and your gut, right?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that crash course. And I would say the same. I mean, a lot of people that haven't known me, and then some people that have known me for a long, long time are like, you ever just pause and look at what you're doing? And did you ever think that you'd be doing the things you're doing? And I'm like, absolutely freaking not. Like police work is great. And I was loving my different assignments. And, whether it was canine or like Sarge, like I could have ridden it out for quite a lot longer. But it's interesting what life does. And as far as opportunities and passion and how that all aligns. But I do want to cut back a little bit to that. Leadership is kind of what is ringing in my head when you were just explaining your different experiences across the nation and internationally. And cultural competency is a thing, and then meeting people halfway is a thing. But ultimately, I love how you just put that out, like, simple terms. Leadership is leadership, right? Like, you almost, I think sometimes we get too tunnel vision and we think on these little different things. And that's where I love, again, like how you post about holistic leadership and just looking at the big picture and how that is, I suppose it's not super complicated. I just had this conversation with a guy at work. The concepts aren't super complicated. You hear it packaged so many different ways, but the application is where it gets really, really nuanced.
Yeah, yeah, and it absolutely is because our brains are designed to keep us in the known and familiar, right? They're 2 million years old. It's Jurassic, and so it wants to keep us in the known and familiar and safe. But that's not where growth happens, right? Discomfort is a sign of growth. So when we realize that, yeah, I can understand a lot of things, but insight without action is useless. It's not enough right now, and especially in today's society, to know. We must do, we must execute, we must move. And that is how you create the podcast, open the business, go on the dream vacation, ask the girl or guy out. I mean, the application is far more than, your career. Holistic leadership is how you lead your finances, your business, your relationship, your children, your husband, your wife. It applies to everything. And for your audience, if I may, Eric, because I know so many people might dissect it a different way, but holistic leadership in the most simplest form is how you influence and inspire all parts of you, yourself, so whole person, mind, body, spirit, and then you can influence and inspire others. Because if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. So you got to dial in, right? All parts of you, right? All parts of you matter. And by spirit, I mean, what lights you up? What are you here to do? What are your values? What makes you feel good? And we often, especially in law enforcement, we ignore that. I know I did. I'll be very candid. I didn't let myself take the vacation, have the vacation time. I was a workaholic 24/7. Sure, I fed my mind a little bit and my body. Well, yeah, we PT. I mean, we know that. But
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
was ignoring my mind and spirit. And when I started to nourish those parts of me, whoa, did the game change. I became a better wife, a better leader. I started sharing all of this. I mean, it's a game changer, truly.
Yeah, yeah. You said so many truth bombs in there, and the first one I actually took a note because I want to cut back and not forget because my mind can go all these different places. Is that concept of lead yourself? It's what I've been posting about. It's what I've been nudging folks. New hires an audience that I've continued to reach out to. People coming into law enforcement. It's just that notion that it starts with you. Like you are the one, you are the hero of your story, and you have to take ownership before you take ownership of anyone else, right? So it starts with you. Run your life, run it the best you can, and then that will expand out to others. The other piece I really loved was that I think that so many of us can be, for sure, the people that are taking the time to listen to podcasts, and certainly a podcast like mine, very reflective, introspective. That is an effort and that is an intention. And that is a fantastic first start. But I love how you talk about action, how we need to move and act and do. And we need to jump before we're absolutely certain. Like we got to do calculations and prep. But I'm saying this to so much of the audience because I know through feedback and people that hit me up, I'm saying it this way because that's me. Like I was and still have to grapple with the paralysis by analysis, being super introspective and reflective through my whole life was weighing out every little thing. And then in law enforcement, and this is a struggle for a lot of new cops, is you got to make a decent decision and then or a good decision. You work on improving that, but you can never try to get the best decision most of the time, right? Like pretty good is pretty good and great is great, but trying to get perfection is a fool's errand.
It is. And perfection's the lowest standard. It doesn't exist.
Mm.
And I jokingly call myself a recovering perfectionist. And I was smiling the whole time you were talking because it deeply resonates with me because I was like that in the past. And I recognize how I slowed myself down because we can be busy, but we're not making progress. And so that requires that intentionality and really looking at how we are spending our time, which is our greatest currency. And a sobering thought is, I don't know how much time I have left.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Hmm.
don't know what I can go to my bank account and see some numbers. Okay, good to go. But I don't know how much time I have left. So I really need to be so intentional with how I'm spending that currency, how I'm spending that time. And habits shape our reality, how we really experience every single day. Do I have a habit of binging Netflix and eating popcorn? Or do I have a habit of, you know what? I'm going to read for 10 minutes before I go to bed and feed my mind. So I'm programming my subconscious. So when I go into slumber and sleep, everything's moving exactly to serve me. And when I wake up, I'm going to have a gratitude practice and I'm going to get myself in that powerful state. I mean, these things, the little things are the big things and they really matter. And so, yeah, I hear you, especially with new or aspiring leaders or new hires just coming on. I wish I had these strategies out the gate when I was a
Yeah.
baby agent.
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly. And so let's cut back to that. I am curious, like, where that came from. Was that always a drive? And how'd you find yourself in the NCIS?
Yeah. So how I got an NCIS was by accident. I think that's how my whole life has been. And by accident, I should say it's opportunity and you follow your heart and your intuition and gut, which, as we know in law enforcement, you trust your gut, right? That's that training. And right. So I have a degree in forensic and investigative science. And so all things crime scene investigation. And as a part of the completion of my program, which was built by the FBI, which is a whole other story, I had to have an internship. And so somebody who's now actually an FBI agent out east, he was like, Rebecca, you can't spend your time in a lab. You're too hyper. I think you should look at NCIS. Like, what the hell is NCIS? This was before the TV show.
Yeah.
And he
And that's all
explained,
anyone knows about it outside of,
yes.
the layperson.
And so the rest is history. I got, I had to interview. I had to buy my business suit from J.C. Penney. I was living on
Ooh,
peanuts,
yeah. Look at
college.
you.
I had to borrow my professor's car to drive to Washington, D.C. I was so nervous. I interviewed, I got the internship, and I was at the United States Naval Academy out in Annapolis, Maryland, and I fell in love. I was like, wow, being a federal agent and, being able to serve our war fighters and support the military with not just like crimes, but also national security. It just opened up my whole outlook to life and what I could do. And I love travel. And so the rest is history. And short tour I did with Air Force Office of Special Investigations. I was stationed out at Nellis in Vegas, but then the majority of my years were with NCIS.
That's so cool. You found yourself with your new sweet JC Penney suit, and some people listening are like, "WTF is JC Penney?" Um,
I'm dating myself.
yeah, it's a step below Macy's. Super sweet. But yeah, you're big leagues. You're Washington D.C. So fun.
Yeah. It was a wild ride. When I look back at that 21-year-old, I was like, oh Lord, just like you had no idea what you were gonna see and do, and just like incredible things, like supporting, protective service operations for many presidents, to undercover work, to just like working on national security things that, I call it the silent war. We just don't know what's going on in the world, and, helping victims of horrendous crimes and just trying to give the voice to those. And it's all about service, Eric. It really is. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's service and helping others and trying to improve the world. I know that sounds corny, but I mean, law enforcement brothers and sisters, we know that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a selfless job. It's a lot of sacrifice, but we do that so others don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I even just taking a moment being like, man, that sounds corny. That resonates so much with me because when I talk and meet with people like yourself, and just got off a call with a psych doc yesterday and thinking about some different projects and ways that we can help our industry in the region, and we both found ourselves at different points in the conversation saying, I know it sounds cheesy, but then as we kept talking, I actually interjected. I was like, man, you and I don't need to say it sounds cheesy, like, because you and I, like, we know what we mean and we know how we feel, and that is the thing. But it's almost, I think when you feel something that the peanut gallery would say is cheesy, that's such a maybe an internal compliment we should be aware of and recognize. Like, yeah, I am super positive, or I try to be, right? I try to be optimistic. I try to be innovative, and all these things that are really hard to, trying to cut through the muck of just toxic, negative, limiting mindsets that they're just so pervasive, right? In life or in career. So and I'm really curious because with your high drive, clearly, you're a workaholic, self-admittedly, and a lot of that resonates with me. I can feel that. I see you. What was the genesis to step away and start considering? I mean, 15 years in, right? You're established, you're a veteran, you're a leader, you're doing all these legitimate, specialized things. You're on tours, you're going out of country. Um, it's often rare for someone to just take a moment and pivot so dramatically.
Yes, a question I am often asked. So yeah, and very simply, it was an internal nudge. It was intuition, and it actually started when I was stationed in a Northeast field office in Rhode Island. And by the way, great work up there, great team. I absolutely loved my assignment up there. I was a supervisory special agent up there, and it was one of those things that, the quality of the answers determine the quality of questions we ask ourselves, determine the quality of the answers we get. So I started to be more mindful of some of the questions I was asking myself, the trajectory of my personal life, my professional life. And I started to think, what else is out there? How else could I serve? Because again, my what and why is so powerful. It's service. I'm mission driven. I'm values driven. And then, I had a couple duty assignments past that. Now I'm on the West Coast and I'm the assistant special agent in charge of our Marine Corps Westfield office at Camp Pendleton in San Diego. And that's where it really hit the zenith or the pinnacle, if you will.
That's a good word.
Or it is a good word. We don't use it enough.
Yeah.
And I'm all, okay, I'm going to do it. Right. And I had considered the alphabet soup, do I want to do another ATF DEA, blah, 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 or do I want to try the corporate world? And so I like to be pushed. I like to be challenged because discomfort is a sign of growth. And I wanted to be challenged. And I was very comfortable being an agent. And a lot of people thought I was crazy because I was so close to my 20 and the retirement. But it's not about that for me. And clearly, because I left, right? It is about serving and becoming a better, stronger, faster leader. And so I worked at a tech company and a senior leader running a department. And that's, again, when I saw these same principles and all of the things. And yeah, if I would have stayed where I was, Eric, I would not have my podcast. I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't have opened my business. And so I challenge people. I'm not saying to leave law enforcement or leave your career. I'm not saying that. Yeah. But what I am saying is if you have a dream or if you have something that's always on your heart and mind, like pay attention to when you daydream, when you're walking the dog around the block, when you're PTing, where does your mind always go? That's the thing right there. Start there. And then just move with what feels right, which means you got to get out of your head and you got to get into your heart. Again, I know it can sound cheesy, but that all answers lie within. Logic would say Rebecca is back in DC, briefing at the Pentagon, back at headquarters, because yes, I did a tour there. All roads would have led back there. And I would have been honored to do so. It's incredible work, but that's not what I was meant here to do in this season of life. Chapters close. Make peace with this. And then we move on, and then we're able to open our aperture to such beautiful opportunities that aren't made possible if you stay where you are.
Absolutely. And I love that you talked about thinking outside of career. And it doesn't mean you should change. It doesn't mean you have to. But I think it is a mindful thing for law enforcement to be prepared for contingencies. And we're so practiced and we become expert in that. Like literally going to the grocery store, you start thinking about, oh my gosh, what do I have? Did I bring my backup weapon? Did I bring my off-duty carry? Or if I can't off-duty carry where I'm going, what is my plan? Do I bring a knife? Can I bring that? Do I bring a pen? Do I bring, like what is around me? What are my exit strategies? And then at work, we know on and on and on. However, so many of us are fearful. I know that's a hard word, but we're concerned, we're uncomfortable, we're fearful of what if I can't do this job? And so, honestly, and I've talked about this a little bit, but all of this is in essence part of that, right? It was 2020 and I felt more comfortable being vocal about what I felt police could share in and trying to bridge and also help just healthy, tangible themes with fitness, nutrition, peer support, the things I was super, super into through Blue Grit, like initially just Instagram, right? Just to be helpful, post the kind of things I would post anyway on my personal, but be public. And then so much has changed since then. However, for so many people, it's just hard to even recognize that one thing. Like, what is the thing that lights you up? Like, what feeds your spirit? What are you passionate about alongside or outside or just maybe a different perspective on all these other things you care about, like your career in law enforcement and public safety? For me, even just dipping my toe in that, I realized that, writing nutrition plans and a workout plan, like although I enjoyed helping people I knew about that and trying to just nudge them and teach a person how to fish, it wasn't what lit me up. Like I didn't want to make that my full-time thing if God forbid I couldn't do this job anymore. So that was very instrumental in learning that. But unless you actually take the leap and you play with things, you stay curious, you just put yourself out there a little bit, you'll never know and you'll always just kind of wonder. So I love how you illustrate that for yourself. And truly, I think so many people that listen to your content, mine, they are into finding that discomfort and leaning into that. So I would just encourage people continue to do that because there is this hack where we can find our own kind of dopamine response from discomfort and feeling that growth and being proud of ourselves. Because I don't think that we as individuals or society are really geared or we are intentional about being proud of what we've accomplished.
Yeah, 1000%. I love how you crafted that. And, you'll see all over my website, LinkedIn, Instagram, awaken the leader within. And there's so much to unpack with that, but it's truly awakening all parts of you. Because how often do we go through life and just kind of go through the motions? We get up, we brush our teeth, we shower, we walk the dog, we make the coffee, and you're just on autopilot. But you're not taking that time to really sit your butt down, right? Like tame yourself like a wild stallion, get uncomfortable, right? I love meditation. That has been an amazing modality for me where I am focused on my internal world because that's what I can control. That's my sphere of control. I can't control the economics. I can't control how my day is going to look like, which we know as Leos, we have no idea what we're stepping into. But I can control my response. I can control my mindset. I can control my inner world. I mean, look at Nelson Mandela, what he went through and that mastery, right? Like those are goals. But we have that. And so that requires us to do you even know what your values are? Like, what are your values? What's the fuel in the tank from where you are to where you want to go, personally and professionally? And for me, there was a difference where I had to step out of what I only knew. And I knew that I had to make myself so uncomfortable and I had to push myself all edges, like explore the edges of you, that I was able to do these things what I'm doing now. And maybe for, one of your listeners, it's something personal, right? It could be anything in your personal life because these principles apply to business and to life, right? There's not a line in the sand where I can only do this tactic, when I'm, got my duty belt on and I'm running and gunning. No, this applies to how you're leading your family and your finances. And so once you open yourself up, allow yourself to get uncomfortable, really explore all parts of you, clear out the junk, right? We all got limiting beliefs, BS, belief systems, bullshit. We got to clear that out. We got to replace it. We got to get new habits. We got to break the old stuff because the becoming process really is the overcoming the old, right? You got to have a death of that. You got to kill that part of you. You got to make peace with that. Not everyone's going to come along on the ride either. But those that do, right? You keep ascending. You keep ascending. You keep ascending. So there's so much to unpack, but it really does change the way you experience and live life.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of what you said made me think about a lot of tips, and what you even said, I would encourage people, if that sounded like a lot, then that's good. You can take a pause, rewind back, take some notes. And I find myself doing that all the time when I listen to different podcasts. And oftentimes if I'm on a run or something, sometimes I'll pull off and I'll voice to text myself a note. I was just telling this guy I coach, my notepad is terrible. It's just like probably 30 or 40 notes, and like some I revisit and some are just like they're just in the ether and they're just there. And I really should go through and delete them. But ideas for something I want to write, ideas for something I want to talk about or talk about on the show. But a couple things that I'm going to kind of zigzag around. One is that, you're identifying all these things that people can work on, and that may sound daunting. So my flip is, start with one thing, and it could be your personal life. It could be with your relationship with your household, right? Like different members of your household. How do you want to just make an interaction or maybe a time of day just a little bit more pleasant? Maybe it's when your kid comes back from school and it's always kind of a train wreck. Like, let's take a pause. Let's reserve some judgment and then just say, hey, how can I affect this little interaction just a little bit better today? That actually was helpful. Let's do it tomorrow. And then that's your new habit, whether it's something at work, someone or somebody. So I love how you talk about your locus of control. It starts with you. It starts with your mindset. And then we can start kind of picking at these different aspects of our life, different aspects of our health, relationships, finances, one thing at a time, right? It's hard to do all this at once. For some people listening, they're going to be like, "No, I'm in. I'm doing all of it at once," and that's okay. I would just challenge people to take pause, look at the long term, and then with routines, like start small and build momentum.
Yeah, it's what comes to mind is Kaizen, the art of continuous improvement. Focus on getting just 1% better each day. Because that's how do you run a marathon? One step at a time. How do you build a wall? One brick at a time. And that really does make a difference because if I am so focused on just 1%, if you think about a farmer on a tractor, if he turns just 1 degree, where is he going to be in a mile? So far away if he would have stayed where he was. And so I think, and I can identify with this because I'm an extremist. When I go, I'm like all in, full court press. I immerse myself. I'm obsessive and I'm aware of that. So I have to check myself because I know that I can 24/7 go. One, it's not sustainable, but two, it's kind of liberating when you just give yourself that permission slip, like, okay, let's cool the jets a little bit. Here's my goal. That's what I'm shooting for. I got my target. What's the fuel in my tank to help me get there? What can I start doing right now? Because each and every one of us have a step in front of us. And I say this to my clients all the time. We have a step in front of us. No one is stuck. The only people that are stuck are 6 feet under. And I know that sounds very harsh, but it's true. Like, problems are a gift. Challenges are a gift. It's life's call to action, time to accelerate, time to get better. So if I reframe my mindset with all the things going on, right? Like the beautiful example you gave, Eric, like, oh, kids come home, it's utter chaos. Well, flipping it and saying, how grateful am I to have this experience? Because one day I'm going to miss this. And these are precious times, and I'm molding this little human in this world. And it's so important right now because there's a lot of uncertainty, and, you know, people tend to live in fear a little bit more than they should. And I have control over my response. I have control over the blueprint of this little human. I have control over my words because our word is our wand. I have control over so much, but we focus on the things we don't have control over. And it's a natural response, right? Give ourselves some grace, which is a part of that mindset. But it's just that radical awareness and ownership of so many things. And it's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all ties back to what you mentioned earlier, which is values. Like, do we know our values? And if you're asked, if you're put on the spot by someone that you love or a total stranger, and just like, hey, I'm curious, Rebecca, like, what are your values? What do you live by? I feel like a lot of us, unless we are intentional and unless we've done this actual exercise, like the literal exercise of it, like writing it down and processing, and we would be like, well, I mean, I care about this, and man, that's really hard. But we're trying to chart our lives. We're trying to balance all these things, career, decisions within your day-to-day schedule, family, hobbies, friends, finances, right? All these things that can be amazing and also can add so much stress. And what is the governor? What is helping us decide this way or that way? And that is your values. That is your personal mission statement, or some people put it as like a personal constitution. So I've shared this before, but a shout out to Dr. Gino. But I was dragging my feet on this because I am I think very much like you, where it's all or nothing. So it's not like just something I just wanted to dive into. And I was scared. I was scared to sit down and really hold myself to something, because I know how I feel about things, but my mind goes all different places. But to sit down and work on this, it was actually a flight. So good. I was kind of stuck there, right? Stuck with my thoughts and the humming of the engines, but just starting and writing down some bullets, and then I rewrote it. And then when I got home and I got in front of a laptop, I rewrote it again. And it's my values. It's what I've actually referenced relatively recently in entertaining, I suppose, a contracting opportunity to travel and train this thing, where I was so enticed by a lot of things, but when I revisited and I reread my values, I was like, not right now, right? Like, not with the timing and not with the requirements and like what it brings for my family or what it takes away from my family. Ultimately, like, so cool, very honored, but not the right fit. And so I would highly suggest people, it's literally what I just suggested a few people in the last week and a half, start writing something down. We'll revisit this, but start somewhere.
Yeah. I can't emphasize foot stomp, underline, flashing lights that
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
because it's one of those things that, like, you hear about, but you're like, like, is that really going to make a difference? Right. Like, I did that with a gratitude practice for years, and now I want to kick myself in the butt for not doing it sooner. But I really want to underscore that, because it's the values that you have and the order that you have them in matter. The rules that you have around values matter, right? Like, I'll pick an example. We'll pick love. So I can love my husband loves me, but if my rules are so strict about love, I may not be able to feel love because of all the rules I have. So I would challenge people, not only what are your values, what are these power virtues, what are the fuel in your tank, but the order of them. Like, if I'm going to prioritize success over love, guess what? My relationship might suffer. And if I have 5 million rules, I could have so much success in the world, but I'm not going to feel fulfilled because I'm not achieving that. So you want to have these values. You want to make them easier to achieve. The order matters. But then also, I would say, what are the values that you don't want? Like, for me, it was being attached to outcomes and worry and like self-criticism. I'd be very hard on myself. And so I had to bring that to my awareness. And I went through a lot of like really intense seminars and trainings and things that I invested in myself to be able to deprogram that so I can talk about it right now without emotional charge. But it was unconsciously controlling me, and I didn't realize it until I did. And then I got rid of that. And so now I'm so radically aware, and I have more freedom, and I'm feeling good, and I'm attracting more abundance. And I don't mean just financial, I mean like mental, physical abundance, all types of abundance in my life. I'm actually working less and I'm accomplishing more. I'm feeling great. So
Yeah,
how we think
what a
something should
challenge.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So they really matter for all your listeners. Like just going through that exercise, like it is a game changer, truly.
Yeah. Just that last piece, right? Like working less, accomplishing more. And that is very counter to the hard charging, high drive law enforcement officer. And for most law enforcement officers, no, you got to work what you work. But let's think about it this way. Like, yeah, you're paid by the hour, you're on this shift work. We're not talking about that per se, but what are you doing with your hours there? And my example being in recruiting and trying to flip for sure the worst time that my department had ever seen and a lot of the nation had ever seen in the last few years. But I wish, if I had one regret, it was stepping away from the desk more and interacting with people outside of different units more. Like that was something that was always important to me in interacting and kind of cross pollinating, just rubbing elbows with people that I worked with in the greater sense of the department through my whole career. But I was so nose to the grindstone that I really lost sight of a lot of things and how this piece fits into others. We were successful on paper, but I always value the long term of taking time with people. And so that's my own reflection as I moved into, an administrative role in command, is that there are all these pressures and projects and fires to put out, and they're all kind of hovering in the space of my Outlook inbox and then just my desk and my life. However, again, it's being uncomfortable. As one of my bosses, actually, I took this from him, and he essentially gave permission. He's like, you just got to be okay just sitting on the cactus. And he's like, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
And you realize that there are other things that pop up. So my interpretation was that as an officer asked if I have time, absolutely. Like it's a huge compliment that they even want to talk to me. And so everything else can wait. Like there's always tomorrow or later. Very few things need to be happening right now. But what does need to happen right now is I need to be available for someone that is asking for it.
Yeah, that's a true leader right there. And it really does make the difference because rarely, and we can say this because law enforcement, but I train this for those disciplines outside of law enforcement who hire me as a coach and speaker. Rarely is anything so catastrophic that you cannot make time for yourself and your people. I
Yeah.
mean, truly. And if you are living by that, there's something wrong. And I would have to lovingly challenge you to look at how you're filling your day and your habits and time management and all of those things that we can all improve on. Every single one of us can improve on that. But rarely is anything so catastrophic that we need to stop immediately and then pivot, right? Because again, you need to pivot. You need to have that adaptable, flexible NCIS. We always said semper gumby, right? You got to have that. But there's being that leader and setting the tone and setting that example, especially for new agents, for new law enforcement officers coming in and they're watching, like they're paying attention. And so I always checked myself and made sure that I did I called it mobile leadership, where I'm talking to the different squads, I'm talking to different teams and, hey, how are you? How's your dog? How's your kid? And I know the name, I'm not just saying it. And I'm not just doing it to do it. It's genuine. I come from that heart-centered leader that I want to I care about you as a person, right? Like we're here to do a mission, but I care about you as a person. And it does make a difference because it instills confidence. It instills empowerment into my team. Like, hey, I trust you. We've built this foundation of trust and respect. So when the shit hits the fan, because it will, right? And we've got an active shooter, or we've got, homicide rolls in, or whatever it is, we have that foundation that when we need to get after it and there's things going on, you trust me, I trust you. And that saves lives.
Yes.
I mean, this is really important stuff, even in less intense environments. Everyday change management in the tech sector, the same principles apply. I can't build the roof of a house before I build the foundation. We got to start with each other. Trust and respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, there's so many places I could go and I want to go. But one thing I want to cut back to, because I think it's going to be so valuable to me and others. First off, thank you for the compliment. The leadership and acknowledging any compliment with leadership is, I think, uncomfortable. It's definitely uncomfortable for me. And my only twist to that I would say, I appreciate that, and I'm trying. And I think that that is a adage of any decent to great leaders. As long as you're trying, you're part of the way. So always a work in progress for me. So thank you. But one thing is being so achievement oriented, so high drive. What would you suggest to people that feel themselves in that place and space to allow themselves the pause? Because an example being a meditation, so many people say they don't have time for it. And then the flip is commonly that means you need to make time for it. So whether it's that or whether it's the inbox, whether it's the caseload, 10, 15 cases on their desk, how do you have or help people grapple with that and reprocessing and reorienting how they
Mhm.
look at that?
Yeah, great question. Because listen, I'll be very candid because I'm an open book. I was always chasing the next career high to my own
Mm,
detriment and to the
hmm.
detriment of all parts of my life. And I didn't realize I was doing it. I'm like, I'm serving, I'm helping my team, I'm
Yeah,
helping the warfighter, I'm
yeah,
doing all these things. I'm serving the country when so many people aren't, chasing that career high. I'm not saying don't have goals and achieve, but if it's at your own expense, which requires you to have that moment of introspection, it requires you to, again, sit down. If meditation isn't your thing, and I'll pick on my husband, who's also, he's in law enforcement. He's a special agent on a different agency. But for him, sitting down and closing his eyes would not be beneficial. For his meditation is going outside in nature, which is
yeah,
also a form of me,
yeah.
and
Me
just
too.
being in nature. Like I'm looking at the Montana mountains right now. Like I have such clarity. I can think. I have a moment to myself, right? If you can't be alone with yourself, like that's like we got to like sit with that. We got to figure that out. So when there's 5 million things going on, and I can relate to this, God, can I relate, especially in my last duty station. Taking the time for yourself is more important than ever because there's going to be things that get clogged up. The body keeps the score, right? So we have to have a regulated nervous system. Like their electromagnetic fields exist around our heart and our brain. And when we meditate, they become regulated. And a regulated nervous system is everything. Again, because we can all subscribe to in law enforcement, we need to have a healthy mindset. We need to be ready to rock and roll at any minute because we don't
Hmm.
know what's going to happen. So we got to make sure that we're checked and that we're aligned and tapped and tuned and dialed in. And I love meditation because it really is that modality that allows me to really just exist, feel all parts of myself. I know it can sound touchy feely, but it
Yeah, I'm
really
in. I'm in.
is
Yeah.
like so much comes to the surface. But for me, and again, this is my journey. It's like, when you hear something over and over again and you kind of understand it, but you're not really moving with it. And then it hits in a certain season of your life and you're like, whoa, and it kind of like stops in your tracks. For me, that was my last year as an NCIS agent. And it was the saying that we are the creators of our lives and everything around us is a crystallization of what we have created, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Your relationship, your kids, your job, your finances, you are an energetic match to the moves you make, right? And this goes into neuroscience, and that might be a whole other conversation when it
I
talks
think
about
it might be.
frequency,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But really, truly, like when you start to think about that, you have the power. You are the CEO of your life. You're the lead actor, the writer, the producer. And so even taking small shifts can lead to huge different changes in your life and your business. And so it requires knowing all parts of you and having that radical responsibility of, okay, this feeling's coming up, this emotion or this thought, it's there for a reason. Let me unpack it. And then what is wisdom but looking at something without the emotional charge? So then I'm able to move effectively and do what I want to do, what I'm called to do. And then everything enhances. You're stepping into the fullness of your gifts. You're feeling good. You're feeling like yourself because it's really that like remembrance of self. And it really is a process and it takes work, but your whole life will change in how you experience it because we don't have to just go through the motions, right? No one is stuck. You
Hmm.
just have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and start to experience things in a different way. And it's incredible what you can call in.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. And I hope that people, again, just marinate on that, hit the pause, rewind a little bit. Because for me, so much what you said, whether it was meditation and I'm nodding, I'm saying I'm in, but I don't do great with meditation and I need to revisit it. I I will revisit it at times. There's some times where a guided one is great for me, and other times where I'm laying there and I get so anxious and I'm like, well, okay, I got to pivot and do something else. And that usually is walking outside and absorbing nature. But I encourage people, if meditation sounds like a lot and a lot of the things that you heard sound like a lot, just pause, like just take a moment. And sometimes when I get home a little later after talking to my grave crew is I get home, closer to midnight, and it's a bit late for me. I'm a natural riser at 5, so you know how the next day is going to go, but it's just part of life. Is I pull the driveway and I step out my car, and the whole neighborhood is silent, right? And there's nights where I can see this hazy thing over the mountains, and there's nights where I get this weird moon glow and some stars, and I just so many times in the last year I just pause and I just look up and I just stand there probably for 15 seconds to a minute, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. And then I feel really great that I took a pause, and I go inside and I wrap up my day. So it doesn't take much, ladies and gents. So just start there, give yourself permission, be curious, and yeah. And I know we could go on and on and on for hours, and we may just need to revisit a part 2, part 3. So, but yeah, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on. Please leave us with what you'd like to leave us with, and certainly include where people can find you, how they can reach out, find your book, and on and on.
Yeah, I would just say, focusing on awakening all parts of you, awaken the leader within, explore different parts of you, get uncomfortable, right? Like just humans are just capable of such greatness. And if you have something that's been nudging you or on your heart and your mind, do it. No more thinking, just execute, move, just keep going. And you're not going to regret doing that. I say the rocking chair test, and that's the last thing I'll say is, when I'm 90, 100, whatever year I am to be blessed when I'm older, and I'm in my rocking chair and I look back, I'm not going to get the bill from regret. I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say, why didn't I do that one thing? I'm not going to do that. Even if I try something and I realize it's not for me, good. That's data. That's information. Then I'm going to pivot. Then I'm going to adjust fire. But I'm never going to get that bill from regret. I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to move. I'm going to execute. And I don't care. Like, I'm going to be doing what I need to do authentically in my truest form, which looks different than others. And so, yeah, my business is Tactical Harmony. That's pretty much where you can find me on all platforms. My website is tacticalharmony.com. And I have all of my leadership and mindset coaching, speaking on there. My podcast is Tactical Harmony. And my book is also there. And it's about how dogs are such great teachers of all things mind, body, spirit.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was such passion together, like the marriage.
I've thought that so many times. Yeah, I've posted about that so many times. Absolutely.
It's so good, right? So you can grab it on Amazon. It's called Unleashed: Holistic Leadership Insights from Our Canine Companions. And yeah, like LinkedIn, Instagram, if you look up my name, Rebecca Fitzsimmons, or Unleashed, I got the book on my brain. Mm-hmm. Tactical Harmony, y'all are going to find me. And Eric, thank you so much for what you do. I loved, like, we met on Instagram. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just loved everything.
It can be such a positive place at times. It can be.
It can. And you were doing such incredible stuff. I absolutely love it. And I'm so grateful for this connection. I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to collaborate. And just, I appreciate, brother, like what you're doing and for such an important community. So my heartfelt thank you and gratitude.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Certainly, I've gained so much, and I know the listeners have too. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.